at a high level, the first thing that happens is your default mode network is turned off or turned down. So this is, imagine that inner narrator, the voice that tells you you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you need to do more, you're not good enough. Turns that off. And for many people, they feel like the anxiety lifts off their shoulders. They feel the weight of the world has shifted. What then happens is these neurons that haven't fired together in many, many years start to fire together. So Michael Pollan gives the analogy of it. You're skiing down a mountain, and as we get older, we ski in the same track over and over and over to where we forget that there's a rest of a run to ski on. Well, the
Mhm.
psychedelic puts a fresh coat of powder, allows these neurons to fire together and connect, and all of a sudden we remember that we can ski anywhere we want and that we don't have to look at this or that or our relationship or our career the way we've been looking at it, and we can look at it in a whole different way, and that is incredibly enlightening.
Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and blessings, everybody, and welcome to Take Back Your Mind. I am your host, Michael B. Beckwith, the founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center. And just about every week, I have a guest on in which we get to have a conversation. We get to chat, and the whole program obviously is about taking back our mind from the virus of fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, propaganda, things that would pull us away from our essential nature and our essential being. And the individuals that we have great dialogue about their perspective on how to come back to yourself, how to take back your mind, how to have a level of sovereignty over your own awareness so that it's not disrupted and intimidated and provoked and seduced by other agendas that are not good for you. So today I get to welcome into the Take Back Your Mind podcast, brother Matt Zemon. Am I pronouncing your name right,
It's
Matt?
Zeman, but close enough for today.
Zemon, educator, author, leader in psychedelic wellness, who specializes in the impact of psychedelics on mental health. He's the author of the best-selling book, Psychedelics for Everyone and Beyond the Trip, a journal for psychedelic preparation and integration. Matt holds a master's degree in psychology and neuroscience from King's College in London. He combines academic insights with a passion for safe and sacred psychedelic use, focusing on broadening understanding and access to these transformational substances. Additionally, he consults with medical practitioners in psychedelic therapy, contributing his expertise to further the responsible integration of psychedelics in our healthcare system. Matt, welcome to Take Back Your Mind.
Michael, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you introducing this topic to your audience.
Absolutely. It's not the first time. We've had Jack Canfield basically sharing his insights into ayahuasca and some other things that he's done. And obviously, we've had Jerry Powell on from the Rhythmia Life Advancement Center and other people as well. But I wanted you because I know you have this broad perspective on psychedelics and the integration into the use for mental health. Give us a little bit about your background. How did your path lead you to this?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question. I was a non-drug user and just kind of a normal business guy, an entrepreneur, and some friends invited me to a guided magic mushroom experience. And I went in with low expectations and, yeah, reluctantly, I would say. And I had this incredible experience where I reconnected with my mom, who died when I was 22. She was 49.
Wow.
And when that happened back then, I had given up on God, and I'd found kind of the low end of my emotional register. And here, fast forward 30 some years later, or almost 30 years later, and I'm reconnecting with her, and I can feel her and me and my kids, and I can understand that I'm carrying her forward and my kids are carrying us forward. And in an instant, I understood a new concept of God that I hadn't had in my entire adult life.
Mm.
I also felt so incredibly safe and loved in this experience, and then realized, Michael, that I didn't feel safe and loved in my everyday life.
Wow.
And I wanted to know why. And insight after insight. And I left that first transformational psychedelic experience wanting to know more. So I went back to school. Part of it was so I didn't know how to read a scientific paper, so I wanted to understand the science. But I also traveled the world and experienced different psychedelics from different types of practitioners, from taitas, from shamans, from MDs, from PhDs. And for me, I realized that I don't want to have to prove I have enough depression, enough anxiety, enough substance use challenges, enough anything to be able to practice and connect with my sacred from time to time using this tool. And I love this as a means of the sacred, but I also work with medical professionals on how to incorporate this into their practices so that we can keep people safe and incorporate spirituality into the practice of psychedelics.
Outstanding. Let's just go back just a second when you said you came in contact with your mom as
I
you were
did.
on mushrooms. Now, what was that experience like? I mean, did you see her? Did you feel her?
I felt it wasn't, for me, it wasn't visual. I've certainly talked to plenty of people who've had visual experiences. For me, it was this visceral understanding that she is still here and that
Wow.
my story that I told myself where she was gone was just a story I had told myself. I didn't know how to connect with her, and I could feel her. And
Mhm.
and that was just truly, truly an incredible feeling.
And so you also mentioned that this broke you into a greater awareness of God, something you had given up on up until that time. So what did that feel like? What do you mean by God at this stage of your unfoldment?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it was realizing that there is a God inside of me, that
Mm,
not the God, but a
mhm.
God, that I am this spiritual being having a human experience, um, and that I get this opportunity to be alive, but that I am loved and I am worthy and I am enough just as I am right here and now, and I don't need any external validation to know those things. And that
Absolutely.
it was a switch went off, and it has completely changed the way I move through this world with that new understanding.
Mm. That's big right there. I remember when that happened for me many years ago, being flooded with an awareness of the presence of love and beauty everywhere, penetrating every cell of my being. The love was so it changed the course of obviously the destiny of my life. But to be able to walk in this world with the awareness that you are loved and supported, that you are enough, that you're worthy, the deep self-love and appreciation that's not hijacked by the ego, that's a big leap for us, for people to come into that dynamic because many obstacles that we face is actually a projection of our own self-doubt and lack of self-worth. So in that moment, you saw yourself the way you really are on mushrooms,
Hmm.
which changed the course of your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what recent findings scientifically have you discovered about psychedelics or any particular psychedelic specifically that you can bring to us today? I mean,
Well, I mean, stick with this for just a moment. And normally, I've got all sorts of geeky things I can talk about, but I'm not talking to just anybody. I'm talking to you, and this is
okay.
your area of expertise. I mean, you are a modern day mystic. For
Mm,
so I there are many studies that show that that first, that there are mystical experiences that can be generated with psychedelics. There's actually a mystical experience questionnaire that's been validated multiple times that Johns Hopkins uses regularly. There are in clinical trials, there are people who are measured the effectiveness of the trial in relation to the depth of the mystical experience.
mm,
And Johns Hopkins has shown time and time and time again that the deeper the mystical experience, the more effective whatever it is that they're studying, the bigger decrease in depression, the bigger decrease in anxiety, the ability to shift substance use behaviors, the ability to shift behaviors that are not suiting the person well. So I bring this up because right now, people meet psychedelics either on the medical model or the religious model or the decrim model. And we as a society, I did not know this, and I did not understand that these were different philosophies. And I get that in the olden days we had healers, and healers were both spiritual healers and medical healers. And I get if we were to say psychedelics should just belong to the clergy, that a fair argument would be, well, wait a minute, they don't have the latest information about my brain and my body to keep me safe. Fair enough. Conversely, if we say it should belong to the medical, they have no spiritual training for the most part. And with these
Mm.
tools that work in both worlds, how do I keep my spirit safe? And I
Mhm.
believe we are entering a time of collaboration and a time of across this imaginary divide that we've created in our Western society to have medical and spiritual working together to use this tool as a not as a cure, but as a catalyst, as an awakening, that then people like you and others can help people move through and actualize the experiences and the information that they have remembered in the psychedelic moment, and then actualize it for every other day when they're not using the medicine.
Absolutely. What you're saying in substance is in order to permanently get through a trauma or some type of abuse or something, there has to be some kind of spiritual awareness. It can't just be psychological behavior modification. There has to be some type, because you said the studies are showing the deeper the mystical awareness, then the deeper I guess the level of coherence around the fundamental sense that we're okay. So when we talk about the mystical awareness, we're talking about an expansion of the awareness of our spiritual nature. Now, I've taught this for years, and it's beautiful that science catches up with the awareness that you have to have some, whether you believe in religion or God or not, there has to be some kind of coherence around your fundamental identity, which is spiritual, to have a permanent, long-lasting effect in the elimination of anxiousness, anxiety, and all the other pathological points of view or experiences. Am I saying what you're saying?
You are absolutely saying what I'm saying, and now we can unpack it for your audience, and we can say, so how does this look? What does this look like to the average listener? Well, to the listener that is using antidepressants or anti-anxiety or mood stabilizers, and they're not working for them, this might be an alternative, because we're now moving philosophically from let's numb the symptoms to let's get to the core and move through this. And again, if the pharmacological solution is working for you, then that's great. But if it's not working for you, if the side effects are too great, if the lethargy, the weight gain, the sexual dysfunction is too much, if you're still not feeling aligned with your purpose and who you are on this planet, then these are another tool that can be open to you again in these different models here in America today. And that's exciting. And remembering that this is not changing who you are. This is remembering who you are and then changing the stories and the behaviors that you tell yourself and that we do that takes us away from who we are.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're speaking my language. I know for me, my path is primarily meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always looked at going through college, I did psychedelics. I tried a lot of things, and I always had very powerful, wonderful experiences, but that wasn't necessarily my spiritual path when I woke up. But I became more appreciative of it as I saw some of the radical changes that people went through after participating in some type of psychedelic substance. And then they would come to me and I would assist them in stabilizing that particular state that they had touched on the psychedelic. So my embracing of it became more available to me because I could see that people's character actually changed, or their intentions changed, their desire, what they wanted to be about in the world actually shifted once they saw themselves differently. And then, as you kind of said earlier, there must be some kind of way of integrating that, stabilizing that, developing some kind of spiritual practice, some kind of intention to maintain that awareness that they touched on the peak of their psychedelic experience. So now, for me, there's a greater embracing of it. I don't promote anything, but there's a greater embracing of it. And I've seen so much, and people that were like addicted I mean,
Hmm.
heavily addicted to, cocaine, heroin, pharmaceutical drugs, and then having an insight, not desiring that anymore, and wanting to actually clean up their act and change their life. It was amazing for me to watch some of those things, you see. So
It's
you've seen a
remarkable.
lot of that, I imagine.
Absolutely. It's remarkable when someone comes in and all of a sudden just remembers that whatever behavior, whatever, however that's manifested in substance use and in gambling and in eating disorders and realize, wait a minute, that's not serving me.
Hmm.
And nobody could tell them that. Nobody can give them that awakening. They've found it for themselves. They understood in that instant that they don't want to do that anymore, and then they don't. And that's the incredible piece of it, that it's somewhat binary. It's like I'm just not going to do that behavior anymore. It's incredible to witness.
Yeah, I know in Denver, there's a lot of movement around legalizing a lot of psychedelics for the public now. It used to be um, anathema, but now it seems
Mhm.
to be much more available, or there's much more liberal availability for psychedelics. Are you finding that?
Yeah, so I'm going to back up then. There's three ways that people access psychedelics in America. We have a medical model. We have legalized ketamine in all 50 states. It's used off-label, but it is close enough to a psychedelic that we classify it as it. We should have MDMA re-legalized this August in
Right,
Colorado.
that's what I was hearing. Yeah, in
Yep.
Colorado. Yeah.
And then in Colorado and Oregon, they have created a medical framework and decriminalized a bunch of psychedelics with ballot initiatives. So that's the medical model. Then we have the decriminalization model, and this is the kind of the libertarian. No adult should tell another adult that they can't put nature in their body. Um, what I've learned to appreciate about that movement is the undertext to that is the medical model is expensive, and it's not fair to people who can't afford the
Hmm.
medical model to not give them access when they can grow mushrooms themselves, as an example. So they are also promoting access to populations that don't have the means to pursue a medical model. And then that third model is this religious model. There's somewhere between 200 and 2,000 psychedelic churches in America. Some of them are ayahuasca churches, some are psilocybin, some serve a number of different sacraments. And these are people who say, I use this tool from time to time to connect with my sacred, to remember who I am, to remember where I'm going, and to celebrate and to give thanks. And for me to explore consciousness, I should be allowed in a country founded on religious freedom to be able to do this. And we're seeing cities across the country, again, decriminalizing to allow more of this. We have the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that effectively is what most of these churches are operating under. And we're seeing, I believe actually, we're seeing an entheogenic or a psychedelic reformation, another religious reformation. If we went from there's an intermediary to now we have the printing press and words, and to now where people are saying, I want a direct spiritual experience and I want to use this tool to have it. And I think we're going to see more of this, and that's exciting.
Right. And these religious models, they're basically an extension of the lineage that goes back hundreds of years in indigenous cultures who have been using this for insight, having revelations into their real nature and being and healing as well. So it's more of an extension of something that's been going on for years.
Yeah, and Michael, I didn't
There.
understand that. I knew I grew up and went to school in Philadelphia and learned about like the Aztecs and the Incas and the Mayas and the Native Americans and peyote, and I knew that. But what I didn't know, he taught me about the communities in Africa working with
Yes.
iboga,
The
the
boga,
community,
yes.
the mushroom shaman in Algeria, the shaman in Siberia working with mushrooms, the witches burned throughout Europe with their use of plant medicine, the Indian use of soma, the Chinese use of their psychedelic plants. So I bring that up to remind all of us that while our governments and our religious institutions have tried to keep this down, we all have a psychedelic lineage, and it
Yes.
hasn't ever stopped. We might have had 50 years of prohibition and 400 years of colonialism and on and on and on. But the use of these types of what I call entheogens, when they're using a substance like this to connect with the sacred, has been going on for thousands upon thousands of years uh, without stopping.
When Nixon was president,
Mm-hmm.
Nixon blocked a lot of this. Alpha wave studies, and he blocked the psychedelics. A lot of that is because it was opening up people to be able to think for themselves, and people were speaking up against the Vietnam War, and they were doing things which the government could not control. And a lot of that had to do with not just psychedelics, but a lot of it had to do with that as well. People started to wake up and could not be controlled by the government, and so
Yeah,
there
he
was a
has a famously one of his
suppressant.
absolutely
Yeah,
one of his lawyers famously said we had in the Nixon administration we had two enemies. We had black people and we had the hippies. And we knew if we criminalized drugs and went after those groups, we could infiltrate the groups. And what happened is that 1970s Controlled Substances Act led to the 1986 Mandatory Sentencing Act, which has just led to massive amounts of incarceration in our country that disproportionately affects Black and Brown people. We all do drugs at around the same percentage culturally, and they have been exponentially impacted compared to non-Black and Brown people.
absolutely. And a lot of the people are still in jail.
Absolutely.
We're doing nonviolent imbibing substances for their own purpose, and not even selling it, and they're still in prison today for something that's now legal
And
in many
that's
cases.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
but
just something I never paid any attention to. I just didn't I didn't pay attention to it before this, and now I see it. There's a beautiful book by a guy named Dr. Carl Hart called Drug Use for Grown-ups, and he's a professor at Columbia. He specializes in addiction, and he says, "Look, I'm a father, I'm a professor, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a scientist, um, I'm a husband, and I do drugs." And he goes into when he does them, why he does them, and it's just a fascinating book. But he talks about this flywheel between government said this is bad, they're going to get academics who are going to say it's going to be bad, the police are going to police it, the public's going to accept it, and it's this flywheel that we now have to counteract the information that we were taught growing up.
absolutely. I like this discussion. What can you explain? Like, what happens, if you can, to the brain when one takes
Mm-hmm.
certain psychedelic? What goes on with the brain chemistry?
Yeah, so I'm gonna do a super high level answer to this. It does vary from psychedelic to psychedelic, but at a high level, the first thing that happens is your default mode network is turned off or turned down. So this is imagine that inner narrator, the voice that tells you you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you need to do more, you're not good enough. Turns that off. And for many people, they feel like the anxiety lifts off their shoulders. They feel the weight of the world has shifted. What then happens is these neurons that haven't fired together in many, many years start to fire together. So Michael Pollan gives the analogy of it. You're skiing down a mountain, and as we get older, we ski in the same track over and over and over to where we forget that there's a rest of a run to ski on. Well, the
Hmm.
psychedelic puts a fresh coat of powder, allows these neurons to fire together and connect, and all of a sudden we remember that we can ski anywhere we want and that we don't have to look at this or that or our relationship or our career the way we've been looking at it, and we can look at it in a whole different way, and that is incredibly enlightening. For
Hmm.
then many people, the brain creates some type of visions. I hate to call them hallucinations because I think that discredits them, but it creates some type of visual for many people, which then leads to this connection with some type of source or some type of sacredness. And that varies widely depending on the wisdom tradition that the person's bringing in and depending on each individual. But many, many, many people say, yeah, I found a connection with a sacred that I didn't know was there. And this was, if not the number one, certainly in the top 5 things that have ever happened to me. Um, and then I guess the one other thing it does is that for many of us, it turns off shame, blame, and guilt. So
Hmm.
with those emotions gone, we can look at our role in different scenarios without the defense mechanisms coming up. Yeah, Michael, the story I tell about this is when I was an early teenager, I had some inappropriate sexual contact with a family member 10 years older. And it
Hmm.
was something I was mortified about. I couldn't talk about it, didn't tell anyone about it. But if you made a joke even adjacent to it, my ears would burn, I'd get a pit in my stomach. On one of
Hmm.
these journeys, I was right back in the room.
Hmm.
And what they teach us is if you see something that's scary, to approach it with wild curiosity and ask, what are you here to teach me? It's easier said than done. But in this case, I was like, okay, why am I here? And in that journey, I could see this person as someone without condoning what she did. I could understand the humanity. I could understand that she had been rejected from her father. I could understand that she wasn't feeling smart or liked, that she was dealing with her own substance use challenges, and that she just needed to be loved.
Yes.
And I don't have to condone where the love came from or how she did it to understand that as a human, I can understand why she did what she did. With that, that hole healed. And now I can talk about it without embarrassment. Sorry, the other thing, just one other thing that was incredibly important in that experience is I realized I wasn't the adult in the room, and
Mm-hmm.
that fault isn't even the right word. It doesn't
Right.
make a difference. It just, this is what happened. And I get the opportunity to live and move forward, and I can do this. And it was so freeing to be able to do that. So turning off shame, blame, and guilt is why these medicines are so effective with things like treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder. So when we think about our veterans, we think about our first responders, we think about victims of sexual assault, these tools are incredible for helping them move through that experience, move through that trauma, remember who they are, and then start living a healthier, more productive life.
Peace and blessings, everyone. Listen, you may have an idea of what prayer is, but your idea may have emerged from religiosity or the way you have grown up into thinking that it's kind of begging or beseeching some kind of external deity. That's a beginning of prayer, but it's not the full measure. Today, we are inviting you to register for our Power of Prayer class beginning June the 11th. I want you to go to agapelive.com. I want you to register. I want you to click the Power of Prayer banner because this is for you. I've had the privilege of choosing 6 powerful, dynamic, unique teachers that will carry you through the understanding of this prayer technology so you're not just begging and beseeching a reluctant deity outside of yourself. You're actually going in and discovering your connection to everything that you want. It's already within you and having it become activated. Please do this for yourself. Register today. This information is in the show notes, but you can go right now to agapelive.com. Click the Power of Prayer banner and then begin to be consciously participating in your own unfoldment. Today's the day. You're the person. Do it now. We will be waiting for you. 6 teachers, 6 weeks. Power of Prayer technology now. Peace and blessings. So when you were in that particular state, you had an understanding of the genesis of her actions, which led to we might call that forgiveness, you know, and so you're able to move forward without shame, blame, or guilt. Reminding me of the story of an individual that I worked with, Jerry Powell, who started the Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. And when he did Iboga, because, he was addicted and he was into all kinds of crazy behavior. And then he saw the genesis of his abuse, of his grandfather abusing him. And he tells this, widely in his story. And he could see that his grandfather was also abused. And ultimately, it allowed him to forgive that pattern and allowed him to see his aberrant behavior and his inner anger and everything he was trying to cover up with drugs was a direct result of that abuse. But then when he saw it, and was able to forgive it, even though it was difficult, it set him free. And because of that experience and other similar experiences, and then our counseling here at Agape with ministers here and him coming to Agape, that was the genesis of the founding of the Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. His whole life just shifted into that dynamic based on his own healing. So I imagine a lot of stories like that. Veterans, drug users, etc., that have had an insight, forgiven it, moved beyond shame and blame, and are now living a whole different life. I know we both know a lot of individuals like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a privilege to be able to sit in community with people and to sit there as a spiritual peer, and for me to do my learning, healing, and growing right alongside with other people, and
Yes.
to witness these transformational moments is just such a privilege to be able to do, and to experience myself, and to share my transformational moments as they happen in real time.
Now, you broke down what happens when someone takes the mushrooms or a psychedelic and they get beyond the inner chatter of
Hmm.
blame, lack of self-worth, etc. What is the difference between that and an antidepressant? How would you break that down?
Yeah, so the antidepressants were really designed to stabilize people in trying times. So the idea is that we would get onto an antidepressant, we would stabilize, and then we would move off of an antidepressant when we were able to work through whatever it is that was causing the friction. Unfortunately, in our medical system today, we are not equipped to get people off of these medicines by and large. For people who have resources, yeah, they can do it. But for the most of us, we're going to go to a doctor. We're going to get once we get prescribed an antidepressant, it's essentially a life sentence,
Mm,
and
mm,
that's not what they were designed to do. It's just how they're used in today's society. So the difference I would say is with the antidepressant, it's going to numb the symptom. Most people are advised to do some type of therapy or coaching along with it, and then to taper it off and move forward. With the psychedelic, you're going right in. You're saying, okay, I'm ready to do this work myself. I am taking responsibility for my own health, my own consciousness, my own well-being. I'm going to take this and I'm going to dive in deep and I'm going to find the source of whatever it is myself. I'm going to see what I need to see, and I'm going to not only see I'm going to see what's holding me back, and I'm going to see where I would like to go. And then again, it keeps coming back to, and I'm going to remember through this process that I am loved and I am enough right now. So again, I'm not changing who I am. I'm changing what I do. I'm changing how I think. I'm changing how I view the world and how I let the world interact with me. It's very different than changing who I am.
right. And because they've had an awareness, they've had a pinpoint awareness of their real self that's
Absolutely.
unadulterated by past experience or interpretation of past experiences. It's like suddenly the perceptual windows are clean and they see themselves as they really are. And then and it's interesting because once you see it, you can't unsee
You
it.
can't unsee it.
And then your modus operandi moving into the world is actually to be able to live at that dynamic. Yeah.
And
Now,
I'll throw one more thing, Michael, just because I think this
sure.
ties into your work as well. Many of us grow up in a scarcity programming mindset where we are told there's not enough. We've got to take what's ours. We have to work extra hard to get ahead in the world. We need to be so worried all the time. We need more for retirement, more for college savings, more, more, more. And we end up becoming hoarders and we end up
Yes.
becoming scared. I think for many of us, certainly for me, the use of these tools, these psychedelics, these entheogens, show us that no, we live in an abundant world. There is beauty and it is free and it is all around us, that there is God in everything and everyone. And with that knowledge, what is there to be scared of? The universe is always taking care of us. It's going to continue to take care of us. That we don't need to operate from fear. We can now say, what do I want to do to align who I am and what my skills are with how I generate resources and how I live my life? And to take out this notion of work-life balance, there's only life. Sometimes you make money, sometimes you hang out with your friends and your family, but there's one life. And I think these tools help us see that.
Yeah.
And then working with people like you and your ministers or other coaches or other therapists help us actualize this knowledge of, okay, I don't need to operate from a place of fear or in a place of there's not enough, there's plenty. So now what am I going to do with that information?
Absolutely. And as that gets synchronized within us, we think differently. We get inspiration. Inspiration leads to inspired action. So it's not magical thinking. If you're actually feeling in your intrinsic nature that you're living in a field of abundance, not scarcity, not lack, not limitation, you're living in a field of abundance. There are infinite possibilities around you for real, and not just as a belief system, but it's a reality. Then your behavior changes, your actions change, and then you bring into visibility opportunities, possibilities. The condensation of that is more prosperity. Yeah, just changing your mindset and your heart set. Because as you said, most people grow up in a scarcity mindset, and it's perpetuated by the news media
Mm-hmm.
and by everything around us is always telling us there's not enough of something. And then that does activate the place within us, that fight and flight activity. We got to go out and conquer. We got to steal by any means necessary and hoard and get things we don't even need in order to fill an imaginary hole within us that doesn't even really exist except in our own mind. So you're basically articulating that this path is actually a spiritual path. It's actually a path of awakening ultimately to our real nature and our real being.
Yeah,
Now,
what I'm actually saying is that our paths, my path and your path, are connected. This
yeah,
tool, these entheogens, these psychedelics, are not everyday medicines for anybody. And for many people, it's once or twice in their entire lives. For
right,
other people, it's once a quarter, it's once a season.
right.
But most of our life is the spiritual path. That is once
That is our path.
that's the
Absolutely.
path. That's all. I mean, once we realize, oh, that's all it's about is connecting with my sacred every day and being present in every conversation and being grateful in everything I do, then it's how do I now find a community to help nurture that understanding and help bring that out? And what would be helpful to read and to understand and to talk about? And all of that is without medicine. How do we use then things like meditation to connect with the sacred and to monitor our thoughts and to find that remembrance on every other day when I'm not doing the medicine? And that's where there's a connection between this and the work you do every day, Michael.
What other therapeutic benefits have you discovered with plant medicine or psychedelics? I mean,
Yeah,
we've discussed a lot, but any other benefits that you've noticed?
I mean, I think it's if we look at a person's whole life. So there are medical and academic professionals who believe this is just a biochemical reaction. You can put these drugs into your body and have a reaction. And there's other academics and medical professionals and spiritual leaders who believe it's a biochemical, psychosocial, spiritual process. So what does that mean? What does it materialize? Well, it can materialize in or manifest in behavioral change. I no longer am smoking or drinking or substances or gambling or eating
Mhm.
or sex or whatever it is that I was doing that was not with the amount of awareness. No bad anybody, but
Mhm.
I don't need to do those things anymore. Okay, it can manifest like that. It can manifest in I'm not feeling the levels of depression or anxiety or uh, OCD that I've been experiencing. It just stops. We're seeing strange things, or sorry, it might not stop, but I can become aware and I can live with it in a different way, and
Mhm.
I can recognize it for what it is. I am not my thoughts. I am not my feelings, but these are things that are telling me something about the way I'm living my life. So that's a very different manifestation that emerges from these medicines. We're seeing really interesting things like there's studies right now happening with autism. And I know people in the autism
Mm.
community using psychedelics
Mm.
who are saying,
Mm.
I didn't know I could live a life that didn't feel like a panic attack until I started using this particular medicine, or I didn't know how to read the room until I used this medicine. And that's beautiful. So we're seeing things like that. And then the thing that's getting the most press right now, and my next book is The Veteran's Guide to Psychedelics. I've been doing a lot of work in this space. I'm working with a Heroic Hearts project on this. When we look at people with treatment resistant post traumatic stress disorder, so why does this matter? We've had over 30,000 veterans take their lives since 9/11. That's more than 4 times the amount of soldiers who died in combat since 9/11.
Mm.
So we have this epidemic going on. We have people losing their lives every single day.
Mm.
And when they've used, in this case, MDMA,
Mm.
they've given them 3 sessions of MDMA with therapy before and after. 70-ish% emerge from those experiences without having a PTSD diagnosis anymore.
Mm.
So it's a phenomenal number. And that's why we expect MDMA to be re-legalized here in America. Hopefully this August. There's an application before the FDA right now. It's
I
incredibly
heard it has some.
promising.
I heard it has some very good individuals that are trying to, on the inside, make that happen. It seems to be people are optimistic about the passing of that law, I should say. Yeah.
They really are. I mean, these are getting bipartisan support. It's Democrats and Republicans working together in politics, and it's liberal and conservative donors working together to make this happen. It was the Rick Doblin and the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelics Studies worked for 30 some years to move this forward, and now Lycos is the company that they have transitioned into to move this to market, and it's so exciting.
You have a video on your website called The History of Psychedelics.
Hmm.
What do you cover there?
Yeah, I talk about how, again, I didn't know any of this. I talk about the thousands of years that people have been using these tools for connecting with their sacred. You know, the one I didn't mention before is the Greeks. I mean, people like Plato, Aristotle, Marcus Aurelius, all these Stoic philosophers, they all had a psychedelic experience as a ritual once in their lives that transformed for 2,000 years. It transformed Greece. Um, so we talk about that. It talks about the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. It talks about the research kicking back in. There were thousands of papers before the Controlled Substances Act, and then all the research stopped, and then it's now picked back up. And today we have over 300 academic institutions that are studying psychedelics. It's beautiful that we have this medical scientific model that's changing perceptions, that's getting laws changed, that's helping us, this generation that all we knew was just say no and drugs are
Hmm.
bad. It's helping
Hmm.
change our minds.
Hmm.
Wow, the spiritual people are still working alongside of them, and this decrim movement is gaining momentum. So all of these groups are working together, and it's exciting. It's really exciting to be alive during this period of time.
Right. So generally speaking, it appears as though that governments have sought to suppress it because it's very difficult to control a population that can think freely, that can think for themselves, that can see through lies and things of that particular nature. And now we're seeing the resurgence of this again, and now
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing people that are actually in the government now walking next to each other, even though they may be in different parties, saying we need to relook at this, we need to open this up again. So the governments have suppressed it historically, but now there's a breakthrough happening. And it may be just a part of the whole dynamic of the awakening that's happening on the planet, where people are just starting to, over the last 30, 40 years, to wake up to their nature beyond religiosity and religiosm, to their
Hmm.
real nature and being. And it all fits, meditation, visioning, right use of psychedelics. All of this is a part of I guess, an evolutionary thrust for awakening at this time in human history where we're facing so many crises that the only thing that's going to solve the crisis is an awakened citizenry, you know, that can think outside the box, can think differently, change their behavior, change their motivations for being on the planet. So this seems to all be working together for good on the planet at this time in human history. Yeah.
I think it really is. I think that we hold this when I talk about God, when I talk about church, there comes a lot of baggage with that. We talk about religion. There's a lot of immediate of people who've been hurt by these institutions where these tools have been weaponized. And I go back to what Howard Thurman talked about. He's like, I'm talking about the teachings of Jesus, not about Jesus. And it's like, okay, now I get it.
Right.
So what I'm seeing in this culture of loneliness, and where the Surgeon General is saying there's a loneliness epidemic, where people are leaving churches in droves, I'm actually seeing that doesn't mean they're not hungry for this connection and for this spirit. They are actually awakening to, I want it and I'm going to have it.
Yes.
And I'm going to have it either in a medical model or in a spiritual model, or I'm going to have it in both models, but I'm going to have it. And that's where I am incredibly optimistic that even though the institutional churches are losing members, that we have an opportunity to wake up as a society, to wake up as a culture, and have this direct experience and have this knowledge to move forward and make incredible change on this planet that we live in these cultures that we have, and not have to worry about school shootings and nuclear bombs pointed at our heads, and create a different world in which to live.
Absolutely. And that world, I always define the world as the condensation of beliefs, opinions, points of view, perceptions that creates a world and a worldview. So if we have more and more people waking up out of that world and actually living in the feeling of abundance, love, compassion, forgiveness, intentional kindness, not just, being nice, we're actually living in a different world. And then as more and more people are living in this world that we're describing, it begins to affect the other world, which is
Mm.
just vibrationally condensed thoughts of lack and scarcity. And we literally change the world one person at a time. Anyone who has an insight into reality affects so many people, you see. So this is world changing, not just magical thinking and wistful optimism. It's it's vibrational change that can now, of course, be measured scientifically with brainwave activity and polygraph machines and all manner of ways that measure thoughts and things of that particular nature. That one person that changes, that has an awakening, that opens their field, literally changes the people around them and even people at a distance because we're all connected. So this is not just, I say at Agape all the times, we don't come here to get high. We come here to get free.
Yeah, I
And,
love that, Michael.
you know,
That's so beautiful. You asked about what the medicines do, and one other thing that I can't believe I forgot to say it is it shows you the interconnectedness of all things. So
yes,
that can look like, oh, we're all brothers and sisters. No, we are literally all brothers and sisters. We might look like
literally.
different waves, but we are part of the same ocean. It can
Yes,
look like, oh, I'm not separate and apart from nature. I am nature. Oh, I didn't realize that. And when I think and just spend some time thinking about my feet on the ground, wow, the earth is supporting me. I'm a part of this. It is so, we are so deeply connected. And that then it becomes really hard to treat someone that is you um, harshly and with violence.
yes,
It's way harder.
yes,
Um, and when we move away from the medicine and back into the everyday life, that's when the practice begins. And that's where working with people like you, Michael, and like your ministers becomes so important to help remind us and help keep in this practice of, you know this. Come on, what do you know? What do you know? How are you going to react? How are we going to do this? How can I look at this differently? Am I telling myself a story or am I actually receiving this information as it really is?
absolutely. I've been speaking recently about individuals who are living in that myopic point of view and are haters. They'll hate another person
Mm-hmm.
because of their color of their skin or their national origin or their religion. They have actually been brainwashed into that particular state because no one is born a hater.
Mm-mm.
No one is born a bigot or a racist. That is something that is learned. That is something that is taught. We are re-brainwashing individuals. We're showing them, oh, if you are a hater, and you have all these reasons why you hate a particular class of people, you're actually brainwashed because that person is you. That individual that has a different color of skin, different sexual orientation, whatever it is, different religion, they are really an extension of you. You just can't see it. Your perception has been dimmed by
Mm-hmm.
brainwashing in your particular culture. And so it's time to wake up, you see. And I love bringing people to that awareness that if you are a hater, you've been brainwashed because you didn't come out of the womb that way. Somebody had to teach you that, you see. And so you're reminding us that an individual can actually see that. And the same with the earth. You talked about the
Yeah.
earth. We are spiritual being having an earthling experience. We without the earth, we don't exist. And so how we treat our mother, Pachamama, Mother Earth, that's an extension of ourself. The one set of our lungs is in our chest, the other set of our lungs is in trees. They breathe in what we breathe out, and we breathe in what they breathe out. We're one. And so this it allows individuals to actually have a moment, as you said, of seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the work comes in maintaining what you have seen, doing the inner work, the meditation, the right nutrition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to maintain that vision that you caught in that moment of transcendence. Yeah. Of which we're fortunate now, where now it's becoming legalized. So people don't have to have the shame of sneaking and doing something, and all of that may bring the nervousness, the anxiety about sneaking and doing something for your own benefit. Now it's going to be more available through legal means. Yeah.
Yeah, which is really, really, again, what an incredible time to be alive. That everybody listening to this, we get to live through this transformational time in history, and that we get to reclaim our lineage, and that we can go in with more confidence about the biology and occasion these spiritual experiences, and have access to groups like Agape to keep the practice going for all
Hmm.
the days we're not using the medicine.
That's right. Our community is mainly a community of practitioners. I don't mean
Mhm.
licensed practitioners, but the whole encouragement is your practice. Are you practicing your meditation? Are you practicing loving kindness? Are you practicing generosity? Are you practicing forgiveness, not just as a religious belief system,
Hmm.
but as a way of living? So absolutely. We covered a lot of material. Is there anything that you might say later, oh, I forgot to say this. What about this experiment or this benefit or anything that we haven't covered regarding psychedelics? Well, let me just say this, because there was a time in which, and we're growing out of it, that when we use that word, even psychedelics, it had a negative connotation.
Hmm.
You're gonna take something and then drop out of society or something like that. When in fact, we're talking about you're dropping into civilization. You're making it civil again. You're being more beneficial. You're finding your gifts, your reason for being. So the old version of psychedelics was, oh, you're just gonna go get high and waste your life away. But we're discovering that it's quite the opposite. People become more productive, more creative, more generous, more loving, more altruistic, more giving. And so that word is the meaning is shifting now.
I love all that. What's coming up for me that we didn't talk about is just end of life and the power of psychedelics for end of life people with end of life diagnoses. So Johns Hopkins, Yale, UCSF, many colleges are studying this, and they're taking people who have been given a terminal diagnosis and are experiencing depression, experiencing anxiety, experiencing this understanding that they're about to meet their maker,
Mm,
and it's hard. And they're giving them 1 or 2 doses of psilocybin, so the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, and they're finding the depression and the anxiety um, radically reduce. And it doesn't change the fact that they're going to die. It changes the quality of life while they're living. And I think that's
hmm
beautiful, and the medical community is making an impact. The FDA has already given psilocybin breakthrough therapy designation because of this work. What we're doing on the spiritual side that I think is really interesting that ties to this is saying, okay, that's beautiful. In the medical community, there are ways to get access to this for the person in the active state of transitioning or dying. But now we in the spiritual side say, well, let's give it to their friends and family, the people bearing witness, and let them have an understanding while the person's still here.
hmm
And it changes the conversation, it changes the healing, it changes the way all of them get to interact during the loved one's final period. And that is incredible, and an incredible use of these medicines for, yeah, I can't think of a better purpose besides for that. That's it. It reduces depression, anxiety across the board, healing, love, everything in these beautiful, powerful ways are shared. And it's, again, beautiful to watch.
Absolutely. I have a firsthand experience of that with a friend of
Mm.
mine who was suffering from cancer, and he had tried
Hmm.
many things, and he extended his life doing alternative methods for many years. But it came a moment where he realized that he was leaving, and the pain of his body, he didn't want to go through the pain. He didn't want to go through, tubes in his body and all of that. And he got permission to euthanasia to do it, but
Hmm.
they gave him also like some type of mushroom or some type of
Hmm.
psychedelic or maybe psilocybin to have him have this very peaceful state. And we all gathered around his bed, myself and another couple of ministers and practitioners, and we had the most beautiful, lucid conversations. He got all of his life together before he left in terms of the distribution of everything he owned. And he finally took his last pill that would allow him to leave his body. And he left in so much joy and so much love. Uh, that it was his own choice, but he left with a deep sense of peace and without
Hmm.
any regret. And it was a very powerful moment. And he still visits us every now and then. We'll see a David sighting, and he'll come in and try to give us some knowledge about something we're doing at Agape. And so he did that. And so I can remember that. It was a few years ago, but exactly what you're saying. I had a very close and intimate relationship with the use of I think it was psilocybin, and then
Hmm.
the other drug was something that actually shut down his organs so he could leave in a very peaceful, non-painful way. Yeah.
Really beautiful that he was able to to script those days the way he wanted to, and that he
Right.
was surrounded by people who loved him, um, and that
And he was
he was
conscious. He didn't go out
yeah,
unconscious. He went
yeah.
out conscious. Said bye. Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I can understand that the human experience, how that can also be sad
Oh,
and emotional, but it's
we still miss him.
yeah, and we can absolutely
We still miss him.
can hold both
So,
those things at the same time.
yeah. This has been a beautiful conversation. Tell people where they can find you. What's your website? Your full name, the whole deal. Where can people
The
discover
whole
you?
thing. So mattzemon.com is my site. I have different videos and guide to microdosing. My books are Psychedelics for Everyone and Beyond the Trip, and they're both on Amazon. And in August, the Veteran's Guide to Psychedelics will be coming out with it, which is all the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds go to Heroic Hearts Project. So I'm very excited about that new book coming out for preparation and integration for veterans.
And is that what the Whole Roads Hearts Project is? What is it actually?
Yeah, the Heroic Hearts Project works with veterans. They've been taking them down to Central America and South America and working with ayahuasca primarily and iboga. They have recently started doing ceremonies in Oregon. So it's very exciting as these, again, states start changing their laws, that we don't have to send our veterans out of the country and all of that expense so that they can have a healing opportunity. And they've been working for years at reducing PTSD in veterans.
Oh, fantastic.
Mhm.
Matt, thank you so much for being with us on Take Back Your Mind. You're absolutely on the cutting edge of helping people take back their mind
Mm.
from anxiety and fear and depression and worry so that they can live a much more conscious and free life. As I said earlier, we're not telling people to go get high at all. We're telling people to get free.
That's a
To,
beautiful.
to
I'm
get
going to
free.
use that line moving forward, Michael. And thank you for sharing, and thank you for all the work you do and helping the practice moving forward, the practice every day, and people find these techniques and these grounding exercises to remember who they are and keep that remembrance front and center as they move through this world.
Absolutely. Matt, have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for being with us
Thank
today.
you, Michael.
Peace and blessings. Good day to you wherever you are on the planet. Wherever you are on the planet, we have just transcended time and space. We're now in the moment together. And meditation is an opportunity for us to continue to go out of time and space, to go into the eternal now. What is the eternal now? The presence that is never an absence, called by many, many, many names, is omnipresent, omniactive, omnipotent, omniscient, transcending time and space. Intrinsically, that's our real nature in being as well. Our real nature in being carries the frequency of joy, love, peace, beauty. Those are all qualities that transcend time and space. So when we meditate, we're not trying to escape, we're trying to embrace our real nature in being and wake up to it. That's what's happening. For those of you who have seen me speak over the years at Agape International Spiritual Center, you've heard me say this on a semi-regular basis. We don't come here to get high. We come here to get free. You've heard me say something along those lines over and over and over again. So now we're going to turn within and provide the context for our freedom. Extract your attention from the external world. Come inside of your own awareness. Become aware that the body is breathing. And for those of you who have heard me, you know I like to say that it's impossible to breathe in the future. It is impossible to breathe in the past. This inhalation or exhalation is happening presently. So as we pay attention to the breath, while we are embracing an intention to be free, we're coming into a state of the practice of meditation. Attention, freedom. Attention, breath, and intention. Be still, be silent. Come into your vibrational fortress of solitude. Stillness, silence, solitude. If your mind drifts into futurizing, regurgitating your past, inner conversations, just be aware of all of that's going on in the mind, but be aware that that which is the content of your mind is not you, it's not your identity. That is something passing through your awareness. You are pure awareness. And as you watch non-judgmentally on the conversations, any sense of anxiety or anxiousness or reframing, regurgitating your past, you're simply watching it. And just by you watching with intention, you are changing what you are watching based on your observation. It's not running you, it's not controlling you, it's passing through. Another few seconds, just be still with the intention of waking up to your glorious nature, timeless, incorruptible, eternal nature. Let us lift ourselves into a feeling tone of gratitude and thanksgiving that we exist at all. This gratitude allows us to move through life more smoothly because our perceptual windows are being cleansed and cleared, and we're able to see more clearly that we are surrounded by a presence that's never an absence, a presence of love. Be grateful. Be thankful. And so it is. Amen. Thank you so much for joining in these precious moments of the pause that really refreshes. Peace and blessings. I appreciate your letters and emails that you've been sending in, but also the notes you're sending on the Instagram and on the website, thanking me for Take Back Your Mind. And I thank you for your support. As I've said before, if you want to support Take Back Your Mind, support the sponsors. The main sponsor is the Agape International Spiritual Center, agapelive.com. We have a Facebook presentation, an Instagram presentation, a YouTube presentation, and a website presentation. You can donate to the sponsor at agapelive.com. It's one way that you can donate. It supports the podcast. Second sponsor is Nutrarise.com. You go to Nutrarise.com, those three lines up at the top, you touch that line, and you'll get Adaptozen. Adaptozen are my products. The Super Green Superfood Greens and the vitamin D3, K2. Both extremely good for your health, your nutrition. You support the sponsors, you're supporting the podcast. Have a beautiful and as I like to say, a bright day, luminous day, because you are a luminous being. Peace and blessings. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in taking back your mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind, and you will take back your life.